Corporate finance practice problem using Excel. Cumulative voting problem number 1. Get ready, it's time to take your chance with corporate finance. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet, would like to follow along, note that we're in the practice tab as opposed to the example tab. The example tab in essence being an answer key. Information's on the left-hand side. We're going to populate that, calculate that in the blue area on the right side, looking at cumulative voting. So just a quick recap on the cumulative voting. You can compare and contrast cumulative voting to straight or standard type of voting. The general idea is that cumulative voting will have a benefit to the minority interest for electing something like the board of directors. So if we're thinking about a typical situation, corporate finance election of the directors, if we want to give more authority to the minority shareholder to be able to get some of their people up there, then you might use a cumulative voting. In other words, if you had just a straight up and down election, you had a list of individuals and you were able to ask yes or no on a list of individuals, then if someone had a 51% ownership, the majority interest, then they would be able to control the election in that case. If, on the other hand, you set something up, as we'll take a look at here in a bit more detail, in a cumulative voting system, then the minority shareholders might be more likely to pick at least a few of the people that would be related to them. So it's usually thought of as a benefit to minority shareholders. Okay, so let's take a look. So we might have a question that looks something like this. How many shares are needed to elect 2 out of 5 of the directors? So let's say that there's going to be 100 shares outstanding, and we want to know how many shares would we need to control in order to strategically then elect 2 of the 5 directors. Now, in cumulative voting, there's typically a formula. You can actually kind of figure this out, and it looks like this down below. We have the shares required is going to be equal to the number of directors needed times the total number of shares outstanding over the total number of directors to be elected plus 1 on the denominator, and then we add 1 to that entire thing. So the idea then being, how can we basically compile our votes so that we can lock down as many people as we can? In this case, we're thinking the 2 directors. Now, the general rule when you're thinking about the cumulative voting is you're taking a look at the full shares outstanding, which are going to be the 100 shares. Then you're going to give each person basically a vote in alignment with how many people they're voting for, how many directors in this case, which is 5. And normally you would think, okay, then they have 1 vote per kind of director. But that's not how we're going to work it this time. We're going to say that you have that many votes, and then you can apply those votes in any way you want. So there's a lot more flexibility in terms of what you can do. You can compile your votes into one area, and by doing so, again, the minority shareholders might be able to then put more influence in a more concentrated area and be able to get results by doing so. So, for example, if we take a look at this formula, then I'm going to put that formula into a table type of format. So we got the number of directors desired. We want 2. We want to pick up 2 of the 5. So we're trying to think about how many shares we would need to pick up 2 of the 5. So the number of directors is going to be part of the numerator down here. Then we're going to pick up these shares that are outstanding. So the shares outstanding are 100. So this is a fairly basic type of example here with some smaller numbers. Then we'll move on to some larger numbers. But conceptually, I think it's easier to see with something like this. We're going to then underline that, and we'll multiply that out. That's going to be the numerator of our formula down below. So the numerator is going to be 2 times 100. Now, also note, of course, you could do this algebraically, just plug in this into our formula algebraically. I do think it's useful to work through the tables sometime up top, or make a formula into a table, because more and more you're going to be working with Excel and whatnot in practice, and it's a lot more flexible to get the thing into an Excel table and then do alterations with it. So in any case, then we're going to take the total number of directors to be elected, and that's going to be the denominator, which is going to be 5. So we're going to say 5 people are up for the election, and then we're simply going to add 1 to that on the denominator. So I'll just say 1. And then I'm going to underline this, and that's going to be our denominator. Denominator is going to be then the 5 plus 1, or 6. And so let's underline that. So we're going to underline that. So now we got the numerator and the denominator, and then we're going to add 1 to it. So I'm going to go ahead and divide that out. This is going to be the 2,000 divided by 6. That gives us the 33, and then we're going to add 1 to it. So we're going to take the 33 plus 1, and that'll give us the 34. That's how many shares we think we're going to need. Now, that's kind of an abstract type of calculation. A lot of times you look at that, you say, I'm not sure exactly, what, like how that works. So let's try to then understand what's going on here. So I'm going to underline font group and underline it. Also note that if you have decimals, such as this one, adding a couple decimals, it's really at the 34.33. Then we typically are going to drop the decimals because we can't have like partial components there. So it's going to be 34. We're going to cut it generally at 34 is the general rule. Okay, so now let's kind of test this out to see if we can make sense of it. Now I'm going to imagine that that we're looking at this as the minority shareholder, right? That's usually kind of how these are set up because they were first thought up as, this concept was thought up as giving the small group that's not in the majority the ability to concentrate their voting power. So that's why I'm going to set it up in this format. But if they were a majority, then you could think about how many votes they could get with however many shares they have. So we'll talk more about that in future presentations, but I'm going to label it as minority and majority. You could also label it just as how many votes we need to do this versus other votes, right? We have two categories, our votes and everybody else's votes. So we're going to imagine we have our votes and we're going to concentrate them in such a way that if everybody else was to know what we're going to do and try to work against us, try to block us from what we want to do, that they would not be able to do that. Now, obviously, in real life, it's unlikely, possibly, that's going to take place because the other person, one, may not know what exactly we want to do. The other group of people, everybody else, right? And even if they did, some people are not going to vote. So you could take into consideration the factor that many times there's a significant portion that doesn't vote and whatnot like that. But the idea here is that we want to cover the worst case scenario and see what we can do, for sure, by concentrating our votes, imagining that all the other votes tried to block us. What could we do in that situation? It's kind of like a game theory type of situation, right? So we're going to say, all right, well, we've got the shares outstanding. Let's imagine we have the shares outstanding are 100, and then the total number of directors to be elected are going to be, we want 5 directors to be elected. That's how many people are up for election, and we want to get 2 out of those 5. We want to get our 2 on those 5. We're imagining we're the underdog, we're the minority, and we want to get some people in there. So we got the 100 times 5, that's the total amount of votes that are going to be out there that are available. We're going to pretend that all votes are going to be counted and that we're going to concentrate our votes in the way that we can, and best we can, to lock down as many directors as we can guarantee to lock down. So now we're going to say the minority is going to be our amount. We're going to say this is us, and I'm going to say it's at 34. So we got 34, not 34.33, but just 34 times 5. That means we have 34 times 5 votes. We got 170 votes that we can put out there. We don't have to vote on each person that's up for election. We can concentrate our votes, and that's what we're going to do on just the 2 that we want to get elected. So this is how many shares we would need to do that. So now we're going to say, well, that means that the rest, the majority, now has 100 minus 34, or 66. What could they do against us with that 66 if they were trying to conspire against us to not allow us to get our people on there? So we're going to say, all right, well, the 66 times the 5, that means they have 330 votes that they can use to try to block us. But good luck, they're not going to be able to do it, because that's why we're doing this. Hopefully, they're not going to be able to do it, right? That's why we're doing it. We're going to block them from blocking us. We're going to maximize our capacity to get these 2 on there. So let's just imagine how this would play out. So let's say we have our candidates over here, which I'm just going to name. These are their names: A, B, C. Right, not candidates. C. We're imagining names being played here. D, E, F, G. These are the people that are going to potentially we're going to vote for. Now, we're only going to have 5 of them that are going to be up there, right? We could imagine more candidates, up, and we're going to pick 5 of them. So we want 5 that are going to be there. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so let's imagine that A and B are the ones that we want. We want these two people to be there. So we're going to we're going to concentrate all of our voting power. We're not going to vote for anybody else. We're just going to vote for these two to maximize them. So we're going to take our 170 votes, which is the 34 shares times 5 votes, and we're going to take that and divide it by 2 so that we can vote for these two people, because that's how many people we can lock down, we believe. So then we could say, okay, so we got those locked down. The total is going to be down here. Total, that means that we have now used up, then, by concentrating there, we used up our whole voting power of 170 on those two people. So now if the other people want to block us now, they can't vote nay here. This isn't a yay or nay thing. It's not like they can then vote these people down. What they can do instead is try to get other people that will take their position with more votes, meaning they'd have to vote for, they got 3 other people that they can name whoever they want, because we haven't even touched them. We're not even gonna, but then they'd have to get the 4th one here in order for it to kick out one of these two. So they would have to basically win 4 other positions in order to beat one of our 2 positions. So meaning if they were to concentrate all their votes, and this is unlikely to happen because they might not be all consolidated together. This might not be one person. It might not be a group that's all talking to each other and whatnot. But we're going to imagine they are for the worst case scenario. We're going to say, well, what could they do if all the other votes conspired against us? What could they do? Well, they could basically say, I'm going to take my 330, and in order to beat basically these two, all they got, if they knew that we were going to vote for 85, they could then just say, well, I'm going to vote for C 86, 86, 86, right? They could try to basically maximize those, and those 3 would beat these positions, and there would be our 5, but they need one more. They need one more to kick out one of these 2. They need one more. So, but they don't have enough votes, because if we take then the total votes of the 330 minus the sum of these 3, that means they only have 72 more votes. So if they sum this up, that's going to be their total votes of the 330. So they can get these 3 in without a problem, but they can't get that last one in, which they would need to do to kick out these 2. No matter what they do with their votes as they vote for the other 4 people, they can't put their votes in any type of way that they can basically beat out, the 2 that we put in place. That's the idea. So, and then if I sum this up on the right, on the right, and we sum that up, then the total tally for votes would look like this. Summing this up. So now we have our total votes. There's the 500 total. So everybody voted. Again, that's unlikely to happen, but this is our kind of game theory analysis. We're saying, what can we do if everybody conspired against us? They know what we're going to do. They predict what we're going to do. They try to actually actively block us from doing what we want to do. Could they do it, right? And then we're going to say, okay, I'm going to copy these results. I'm going to copy these and paste them 1, 2, 3 here, just so we can sort them now. Or let's do this first. Before I do that, these are R2. So I want to make sure that those 2 are still there. Let's make them green. I'm going to make them green. And then I'm going to copy the results so I can resort it in a table. This is a table on the right. So I'm going to copy these results. I'm going to paste them 1, 2, 3, just the values only. And then I'm going to take the results, copy them, and paste them over here, just the values. And then once again, these first 2, I'm going to make them green, because that's the ones that we want. That's R2. So we want to see if those are going to still be kept in place. So then if I reorganize these from Z to A, that means C1, D1, E1, and then A and B. So R2 are still in the top 5. And notice we're not talking about, it's not like you get an extra prize in this case for being the first one, right? There's 5 people that are going to be there, 5 directors, right? There's five individuals. And so all we're looking for are the top 5 in this case. It doesn't matter that they got number 1, 2, and 3. The thing that matters is R2 haven't been kicked out. They're still in the top 5 position. This last one wasn't able to kick out R2. So as a minority position here, we can consolidate our votes and they may not be number one. They're not going to come in number one if the majority consolidates against us. But the majority can't take us out completely. We're still, we're still in the game here. Is kind of the idea, right? They can only lock up the first three in this case, and then they wouldn't be able to kick out our last two. So we're still, we're still in there. We're still able to lock in that position. That's kind of the idea of the cumulative voting. It applies in corporate companies and in this kind of situation sometimes. It depends on the rules. But it can also apply. You can apply these same rules to many different government type of positions and positions in not-profit type of things when you're trying to do a voting type of thing and see how, what would be the fair way to do so. This is often something that could be thought about being put in place.